What's up, Buff fans? Troy and I are back after a little bit of a hiatus. It's been a couple weeks since we've sat on the pod and chatted. The Buffs played, of course, in San Antonio, and that game wasn't good. Um, but
No, it was not.
but overall, it was a satisfactory season, 9-4, and yeah, I went down to San Antonio. The Buffs, men's and women's, both started conference play. The men, not very satisfactory, but the women have gotten some impressive wins in the past couple weeks. There's much to discuss and to talk about, and I think the most prominent topic since it's the off season is the transfer portal and what guys the Buffs have brought in. They've brought in a variety of defensive linemen, a lot of linebackers, three offensive linemen, a kicker, a punter, a wide receiver. They've really touched on a lot of different position groups as a lot of guys are going to either the draft or graduating or enter the portal. There's a lot of movement on the roster, and as we've seen in the past 2 years in our experiences, Coach Prime's rosters always look very, very different. We're learning a lot of new names every spring and every fall. So, um, some guys on here that I really like. I mean, of course, I think we've talked about. Actually, I think it's been a while. No, I think they picked him up last time we talked. But Caden Salter, of course, is the headliner of the uh, transfer portal, him being the quarterback and potentially holding that starting spot next year. But it's going to be an interesting quarterback battle with Josine Lewis, and we'll kind of talk about that and what that may look like in the future. Guys that I think can make an immediate impact: Martavius French from UTSA, really experienced veteran linebacker, 6'2", 255 pounds. He started all the games last year in his senior season, 13 games, recording 80 tackles, leading the Road Runners in tackles. 17 tackles for loss, one sack, three pass breakups, and four QB hurries. He's a physical, quick linebacker, a guy that you can put immediately into your system. And I think that's kind of a common theme across this transfer portal group. It's a lot of guys from group of five schools that are making the jump to Power Four, except Jahi Modem, Kylan Salter, TCU, Texas A&M offensive lineman Aki Oganibi. I've butchered his last name. I will learn that. I apologize. But there's a variety of guys. Tulsa wide receiver Joseph Williams. He's someone that I also see. He's a freshman, but he was the ACC freshman of the year last year. A lot of variety of talent, but those are two guys that I think that are going to make an immediate impact. Same with, I think, I think Zach Chrysler. That was the most recent transfer portal addition. It came last night. Senior offensive lineman. He's a Big 12 honorable mention in 2023. He has 30 career starts, a lot of experience at the guard position. He did allow was his PFF scores are not the highest necessarily, but I think he could either be a really good depth piece or someone that could jump into that guard position. I know they're looking for someone in that role. So, and they also have a new center as well. I'm kind of just jumping over guys here. Zarian McGill, also a senior, played at center at Louisiana Tech. He's 6'2", 308 pounds, second team All Sun Belt selection in 2023, and only allowed 5 QB pressures in over 250 pass blocking snaps last season. So a lot of guys with the different resumes, but some seniors that are looking for another chance to elevate their game at the Power Five level, have the spotlight on them at a school that certainly always has the spotlight on them. When you look at this transfer class, who's really sticking out to you, and who do you think that's going to jump in immediately in the 2025 season?
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of group of five players, a lot of productive players that they've brought in. Zarian McGill, I'm really excited about him at center. You mentioned his list of accolades during his time at La Tech. He's obviously replacing Carter Miller, who decommitted. And he could kick over to guard, but he'll probably compete with Cash Cleveland for that starting center spot. That'll be an interesting competition to watch this spring and into the fall. You mentioned Martavius French, who I really like. 17 tackles for loss for Martavius French last year as a linebacker. That's a really, really high number. Really, really impressive. We'll see if Cy Chrysler can kind of have a bounce back year. He kind of had a down year in 2024, but he was all Big Ten honorable mention in 2023. So he has shown that he can play at this level. He can play at a high level. Big kid for a guard.
Mhm.
So we'll see how he fits in. Um, I really like what they've done on the defensive line. They're getting bigger. Jaheim Otis, Gabriel Lightfoot, Tavian Coleman from Texas State was a recent addition. Another 300-pounder with a lot of experience, a lot of starts under his belt. So it does feel like they are the interior of the defensive line was good last year, but it was a little
Mhm.
light sometimes. You saw that in the games against Kansas State, against Kansas, the games against Nebraska, where they kind of got run on a little bit more. They are getting bigger and a little bit stronger in that area, which I really like. And then the guy that I'm maybe most looking forward to is Tafik Bayard. I really like Tafik Bayard. He's the younger brother of Kevin Byard, who's an all-pro safety in the NFL, a longtime NFL vet. And when you turn on the tape with Tafik Bayard, it's really easy to see him filling the Cam Silman Craig role. He
Mhm.
plays down in the box a lot, really good tackler, really good blitzer, plays downhill, very instinctual player, has a quick trigger, physical, good tackler. He's 200 pounds. He's got a good frame. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, I believe. So that's a guy who has already played a lot of college football at South Florida, but he will have time to kind of grow and develop into a really good player. And um, like I mentioned with Cam Silman Craig, what we saw, the things that Cam Silman Craig was doing as kind of a linebacker safety hybrid, playing down in the box, playing in the run fit. That's a role that I can see Tafik Bayard filling in immediately. So that's one pickup that I was really excited about.
Yeah, I think Carter Stoutmire is someone that we're going to see take a significant step in a starting role. I think we saw him a lot last season. Savion Riley is also with the Buffs in terms of safety position. Makari Vickers, Antonio Branch, RJ Johnson, and then, as you mentioned, Tafik Bayard. So there's six guys within that room, and I think Tafik Bayard could be one of those guys that jumps in immediately and helps the Buffs out there. But as you know, there's a lot of time between now and it's like, oh, when football's over, I just don't really know what to do with myself. But college football playoffs this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think this 12-team playoff has been really exciting and interesting that all four conference championships champions have lost um, in those games. So we'll see how that develops too. But enough about my excitement. We can. Who,
Format
who
will
do you
get.
think is going to win? Who do you think is going to win?
I think if Ohio State plays 80% of how well they can play, they should win. The problem is you can feel it at times with them. They get so tight. Like you could feel it in
Mm-hmm.
the Michigan game where they just get so tense and timid. But then you watch them against Tennessee and Oregon where they're just flying around and they're aggressive and they're both sides of the ball. They when they're playing like that, I think they have too much talent. But we'll see. There's the Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, all really good defenses. They're going to make it tough on.
Yeah, I agree. I also think Ohio State, at least from what I saw against Oregon, when you put the work on the number one team like that, it's pretty indicative of where they can be as a team. They just kind of stop, withholding themselves, like you said. They'll never
Yeah.
ever forget that Michigan game. But
More Jeremiah Smith is good.
oh yes,
Jeremiah
yes. I
Smith.
don't know if you know about him, but he is a very talented true freshman, right?
Yes, true freshman that if he was able to come out in the draft this year, he would easily go in the top three.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like
Um.
Leo Jones, but like 18.
Oh.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, those are starting this week. In terms of transfer departures that we're catching up on, Hank Zelinkis, he left, he went to Rutgers, and also Khalil Benson showed a lot of love to Coach Prime as he entered the portal, and then he went back to Indiana, where he transferred out of, went to Colorado, and now he's back with the Hoosiers, which, good program. Kurt Singzetti really led to them having a really surprising season in the Big Ten, but of course crumbled in the first round of the college football playoff. But outside of Colorado, there's nothing too I can like dive into. Um, I think in terms of just like the way that the season ended, it wasn't I think you and I both had really high expectations of what this BYU game was going to look like, how it was going to pan out. I saw your tweet and I saw in person just how much misdirection BYU was putting on Colorado's defense. They would be in certain sets and then they would put in some motion and then Colorado just wasn't able to adjust. And then on the offensive side, I think this has been, a common theme all season. Colorado's been able to overcome it, but just the lack of the run. Like when you go up against a team like BYU, they have a really strong and stout defense. It's when you have that one-dimensional offense, they can just attack it from a variety of ways. They just aren't able to really. Colorado's offense spread it out as evenly and maybe as balanced as BYU, but I feel like that was a real kicker in the BYU game. Just maybe Colorado's lack of run and BYU's ability to really capitalize on just predicting the pass almost every snap. And they were just, and I think we've seen Colorado overcome that, but in this game, Colorado was just really suffocated by, to the front and the back of BYU's defense and really couldn't get the ball going. And it was fortunate because I had really, this was the game where like the BYU third place, not the BYU, the Big 12 third place matchup. And these were going to be two really talented teams. They looked equally matched, but BYU came out as the stronger team. And maybe I kind of underrated them a little bit, but yeah, they looked like the real deal and definitely a Big 12 championship contender if things went, a different way. When you watch this game, just like your brief thoughts on what kind of went down and why it maybe took such a south turn for Colorado early in the game.
Yeah, this was a surprise. You mentioned underrating BYU. I think that was easy to do coming into this game. Their stock was down. They hadn't been playing very well. Were coming in off of three pretty poor performances in a row to close the regular season. Obviously, the two losses and then the win over Houston in that ugly game in the last week. And they had a great plan and they played really, really, really well, especially offensively. I thought their plan was excellent. You mentioned a lot of the motion. They do a lot of that. Throughout the season, CU has struggled with it. They really took advantage of that. So they put it on CU, no question, and they deserve credit for that. But I was just surprised at all of the talk during the season and even before the season about how big the bowl game was, getting to a bowl game, getting Miss Peggy to a bowl game. Let's win a bowl game. Let's go to a bowl game. And then to come out in the bowl game and kind of lay an egg, that was surprising to me that they didn't really show up to play in that game. I wrote during the game that it was kind of like playing the hits of all of the bad elements of the CU team over the last two seasons since Deion Sanders has been here. They were all out there in this game. They couldn't run the ball, and then they completely abandoned the run basically in the first quarter to the point where even I think it was Booger McFarland on the ESPN halftime was like, they really aren't going to hand the ball off like literally at all. Like they're not going to seize it. Like
Yeah.
he was stunned, and I was like, well, this is kind of how it goes sometimes. But um, so there was that. There was the offensive line played very poorly in this game. They took a step back from I think most of the season where we thought that they had played not an incredible football, but at least competent, functional ball up front in pass protection. That was gone. You had Shedeur Sanders compounding the bad offensive line play by taking some terrible, terrible sacks that just didn't need to be taken when he could have thrown the ball away or, even taken a sack for 6 yards instead of taking a sack for 15 yards. There was the third down in the red zone on like the 10-yard line where Shedeur takes like a 25-yard sack all the way back to the edge of Mata's field goal range, and then Mata misses the field goal. And it was like, that's just it all works together to make it not a good showing. Defensively, they couldn't stop the run. You really felt Nakai Hill-Green's absence in this game. Really, really, really did. They could see was not physical against the run. They were fitting the wrong gaps. They really missed Nakai, who's been one of their best run defenders all year. So that was, that's been kind of a thing at times under under Coach Prime, and that was the thing in this game. The penalties too, pre-snap penalties, during the play penalties, penalties on third down on defense that extended drives early in the game. And that's been kind of a consistent problem. And then the special teams with the missed field goal, the punt return for a touchdown that BYU had. It was just a lot of it was like I said, it was like playing the hits. Everything that has, not these things all haven't been consistent problems because obviously this year CU was a good football team and they managed a lot of these things and they rectified them somewhat. But in this game, they all came back to the surface, and that's how you get a game that gets out of hand so quickly like that.
Yeah, definitely. And Colorado's defense was certainly a highlight. They had 3 takeaways, but immediately when the offense got the ball, they couldn't. One of those takeaways too was that drive you mentioned when Shedeur took that 20+ yard sack and then Mata missed the field goal. It's like situations like that when you are given such a ideal opportunity, a short field, it's like, come on, like you just have to in those situations. And it just wasn't it wasn't one of those games where Colorado was really coming out as a competitive team. It's like, was it the time that passed after the regular season? Like it just didn't seem like they were quite as prepared as BYU, and it was just
A long time without a game.
yeah, it. I don't know what particularly their mindset was. I know Travis Hunter, of course, he came to play. He had a touchdown and 106 yards
Still,
with 4 catches. Elite player. We're really gonna miss watching him, and I'm really excited to see. I mean, I guess the Titans need a quarterback. Patriots, do they have the second pick? It's like
no,
Titans,
Patriots are fourth.
Pats.
Cleveland is second.
Oh, okay.
Cleveland is second. Giants are third, and Patriots are fourth, I believe.
Okay.
I really want Travis Hunter to be a Patriot. I have people in my family that went to North Carolina, so big Drake May guy. Drake May.
You're like, please.
I want Drake May and Travis Hunter together.
I think Travis Hunter can really bring maybe in like a rookie situation like that too. I mean, I think as well too, it's really interesting to see a lot of those teams, well, at least the Pats and the Titans, it's like they're looking for a new head coach, right? At least didn't the Titans fire?
No, the Titans coach is still there. They kept
Oh,
Callahan was his first year. Patriots
oh, okay. I'm
are
getting
looking
confused with
for a new.
Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, Vrabel is probably going to be the Patriots coach, I would
Mm,
assume. Not reporting, but
yeah.
I know
Troy
the
knows. He's actually
the,
Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter.
the
Those are his
Browns
burner
pick
accounts.
the Browns pick at 2 is just like a black hole. Like everybody's favorite player. Nobody wants them to go to the Cleveland Browns right now because they're a mess.
Travis, yeah.
Yeah, but like anyone whose favorite player is going at the top of the draft is like, please don't go to, please, anywhere else.
Well, something that you can rely on the Cleveland Browns on is their defense. At least a couple years ago, their defense was phenomenal. And I remember because they were able to beat the 49ers through their defense. So
Yes, that was a good game.
I know, still repping the 49ers. Alas, at least the Seahawks, can't believe the Rams won the division. It's something that I wouldn't have guessed at all. Anyways, all of our football notes. It was a really fun and exciting season, and yeah, I'm glad you stuck around because I was worried that you weren't. And you stuck around, and hopefully you'll stick around next season too because I cannot do this job without you.
I'm
And
not going anywhere.
oh, let's go! You heard it here first. Breaking news. I'll send out a tweet that Troy is not going anywhere. Yeah, Dion, there's I think at least recently too, there is some the conversation again of him coaching in the NFL is starting to be brought up again on all these shows, and at least on Good Morning America, he mentioned that someone asked if he would consider coaching in the NFL, and he was like, I wouldn't. I would consider it if I had an opportunity to coach my sons. And it's like, well, that
He,
opportunity may potentially arise, but at the same time, I think
he
there's
is
still that
funny.
feeling of he wants to stay at Colorado and stick around for at least a couple more years.
He is funny. I don't think he's leaving. Um, I just don't.
Yeah.
think it would be a poor move to go to the. I think he's better suited for the college game, but it is funny,
Mhm.
and I don't mean this in a bad way because I get it. It's managing the spotlight, but in the local media, he's I'm not leaving, I'm not leaving, and then but in the national media, he does play into it a little bit. He does say,
Yeah.
well, if that's coaching the Suns, it is funny.
No, you're right. We do hear that. He's not leaving side of him, and then yeah, there is a little that playful like, whoa, could do it.
And I get it. It definitely it's got to be really difficult for him
Oh
come
yeah.
to terms with the fact that he's not going to be coaching them for the
Hmm.
first time pretty much ever in Shador's case.
Yeah, certainly end of an era and one that we've had a really great time covering. Shador brought Colorado some viable and quality quarterback play that it was missing for a variety of years, and Colorado had one of its best seasons, finishing 9-4, the best since 2016, and really elevated Colorado to a place where it wasn't before. And Coach Prime was asked in the press conference in San Antonio, what is the expectation of this team now? And he just said that the expectation is winning. This program wasn't winning before him, and now there you see that progress, 8-4, 4-8, and then 9-4. Now this is just a stepping stone. And I think in college football, especially the way that the landscape is now, you can really transform a team from really, really poor into one of the, really competitive teams in the conference. We saw with ASU. No one expected ASU to be that successful this year. And it just takes the right ingredients to really elevate a college program that people had no expectations of. And now, of course, with Coach Prime being the leader of this team, there's more of that positive expectation. There's something that we can say, okay, at least they won't be, as this bad or previously that bad. There's a expectation of winning. There's more. He's established something that he can carry and built a really solid foundation for the future. And I like Pat Shermer and Robert Livingston as coordinators, especially Rob Livingston. I think Pat Shermer, we've seen, some remnants of what that looked like at the Broncos and limited play calling per se. And of course, you want to elevate your 10 personnel when you have a great receiving room. However, one thing I would like to see fixed next year, and I think I've been saying, I'm like beating a fucking dead horse, is just like the run game. I think it could just take this offense to the next level. I think with a quarterback like Caden Salter, really running prominent guy, not, maybe some more design QB runs there, but even then bringing in a running back that can be, that guy, maybe like an LJ Martin or like an RJ Harvey. There's so many different running backs, Cam Scatterwell, that we can point to in the Big 12, but when you look at Colorado's roster, there's not necessarily that guy there. And of course, that comes with more commitment to run blocking, yeah, play calling. It all comes into one thing to really actually commit to the run game. So we'll see if we get that next year. And I think without Shador, I think we will get maybe more of that. But ultimately, it's up to Pat Shermer to really craft an offense that caters to an effective run game. What would you like to see next year out of this team?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The run game is obviously a big thing. My kind of bigger picture question is what does the step up from here look like? Because it was easy to see how you could get from 4-8 to 9 wins, right? You get some continuity in year two. You've got a great quarterback, you've got great receivers, and you get some higher level transfers from some of these G5 schools, right? They beef up the defensive line, they beef up the offensive line a little bit. You nail a coordinator in Robert Livingston, you nail a staff hire like that. Now, how do you get from 9 wins to 11 wins? How do you get into a conference championship game, winning a conference championship, getting into a playoff game? Because replacing productive G5 transfers with other G5 transfers is, while these guys are good players, the last guys were also good players.
Yeah.
So you now that is how you are maintaining your 8, 9 wins, right? Now I'm curious to see how the player development comes in as we get more years into this thing to see how CU can take that next step up into the higher year and up into a different tier of team and a different tier of program because in the transfer portal, it's easier to get from 4 to 8 wins than it is to get from 8 to 12 wins. So I'm fascinated to see what that next step looks like for this team.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Especially with some of the talent. And I think the roster just changed so dramatically. There's some big guys that we don't even know that are coming to Colorado.
Definitely,
And
yeah.
that was certainly a big shift from the first years this year was the more of the that power forward talent that they brought in that really elevated this team and they were able to address a lot of those problems that they had last season. When I look at this transfer class, like it's definitely solid. There's a lot of production there. Let's just see how, it translates. I think expectations are so hard to manage in sports. And especially when you're at that threshold of you want to be maybe not, I don't know, not like Penn State, but like those four teams in the college football playoff, even breaking into the first round, like how can you get to maybe a Clemson or like an SMU? I think every year as media members we try to predict and like project where these teams are going to be, and sometimes it's like sometimes just the magic of college football. We can't really put quite our finger on it what that exactly is going to look like. But in terms of Colorado, there is that expectation of how could they potentially get to 10 wins, and that'll be very interesting to see how that all unfolds because they play Georgia Tech. That'll be their first game of the season. I
Tough
haven't really scouted Georgia Tech. It's way far
one.
out, but that'll be a good introductory game for this new team.
Good coach and a good quarterback. It is not going to be easy.
No. Okay, basketball. It's been a minute since we've talked. They've started conference play. Colorado had a good fight on the men's side against number 3 Iowa State, and then completely just absolutely folded against Arizona State on their first road game, and then the road trip continued in a close 75-74 loss against UCF. Julian Hammond played great against Iowa State. 22 points, I believe, 21 points,
26 career high
26
20
points.
career high 26 points.
And then against ASU, he didn't score any points. So a significant drop off, and
That
Julian Hammond
game
was greatly missed in that game. When you were watching the Iowa State game, what were you really impressed by? What'd you like? We kind of review all three games here, but just starting with Iowa State, what'd you see in that matchup that was like, okay, Colorado can compete in the Big 12? We had our expectations set high with that one, and then this road trip was so tough.
Yeah, our it was cool to see because obviously they played Iowa State and Maui and they got absolutely blitzed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was cool to see that just about, I mean, I guess it was a month later, pretty much a month, just over a month. They were ready for the challenge when Iowa State came to Boulder. Iowa State is a phenomenal team, really on the short list of teams that I think can win the national championship this year. And CU was ready for it. They played with a ton of energy, a ton of intensity early, especially defensively. I thought they guarded the ball really well. I thought they communicated defensively really, really well. Um, they were super, super amped up and fired up for that game. And it showed in mostly good ways, some bad ways on offense too, with some sloppy turnovers, especially early in the game. You could kind of feel how hyped up they were. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually they kind of settled into the game and played a little bit better. But um just the overall energy and the way that the intensity that which they came out with on the defensive end, I thought was really impressive. And they played pretty well offensively when they weren't turning the ball over in that game. I mean, they shot almost 50% from the field
Mm-hmm.
against one of the top 5 defensive teams in college basketball. Iowa State is an elite defense. They guard the ball really well, they rebound really well. Um, no team that I've seen this year, it's they I talked about this at times with CU football and defense. Iowa State basketball, they bring the fight to you when they're on defense. They're in your face. They're pressuring the ball. As soon as you cross half court, they are in your face. They're pushing you out. If you have a big guy that he likes to catch the ball 5 feet from the rim, 7 feet from the rim, and get into his bag, his moves, against Iowa State, he's catching the ball at 12 feet. He's catching the ball at 15 feet because they're constantly pressuring you, constantly pushing you farther away from the basket. And for CU to have as efficient of a night shooting the ball as they did in that game, I thought was really impressive, and I think is a good sign moving forward. The downside to that is that Iowa State forces a ton of turnovers, and they forced plenty against CU in this game, but CU gave them a bunch. I mean, some of the turnovers in the first half were ridiculous, dribbling the ball off their foot, throwing the ball out of bounds, illegal screens, just miscommunications with back cuts, things like that. CU finishes the game with 19 turnovers, which is just way too
Oof.
many. It gets worse when we get to one of these last couple games. But um, that was a killer. And then the rebounding was just a disaster for CU in this game. They got back into the game in the second half. They took the lead. The crowd was rocking. And every time Iowa State missed a shot in the last 15 minutes of the game, it felt like they got the rebound. They got 20 offensive rebounds in this game. 20. So Julian Hammond said this post game too. He said 20 offensive rebounds and 19 turnovers. He said that's 39 extra possessions that we gave them. You're not going to beat the number 3 team in the country when you give them the ball 39 extra times. It just is not going to. It's just not going to work. And if you take the difference, CU had 11 offensive rebounds and forced 9 turnovers. So between turnovers and offensive rebounds, that's 19 extra possessions, 39-20 for Iowa State. And eventually, at that point, it's just a math problem. And Iowa State is too good of a team not to capitalize on that. There were also 2 moments in this game that were really killer in the first half. 2 baseline out of bounds plays where CU guarded Iowa State's guards really well in the half court, but Curtis Jones, their best shooter, he comes off the bench. I think he's their leading scorer, or he was at the time at least. He had 20 points in this game, but they left on one play at the very end of the half with 3 seconds left. Sebastian Ronsick drops a rebound out of bounds, uncontested. That's an extra possession for Iowa State. And they blow the coverage on the baseline out of bounds. Curtis Jones gets a wide open 3. He makes it. And it's a 6-point game at halftime instead of 3, which that felt big. And there was another one where I think it was Momcilovic got wide open on a baseline out of bounds for a 3. And that's 6 points in a game that was pretty close in the second half that CU kind of just gave away with a loss of focus for a couple seconds. And I think that the offensive rebounds, the turnovers, and then those small lapses of focus that even only last 5 seconds, 10 seconds, that's the difference against a team like Iowa State that has everything just nailed down so tight. And that's why they're one of the best in the country.
Yeah, certainly a lot of missed opportunities. I remember one sequence. Iowa State got four offensive rebounds. I was like, oh my God.
Tad was
He was
Tad It was 3
gonna
offensive
explode.
rebounds, I think, in a row because they had 4 shots. And the 4th shot, Curtis Jones got a wide open 3 at the top of the key and he made it. And after they had given up that many offensive rebounds, as soon as Curtis Jones caught the ball, Tad Boyle started walking out onto the court to call timeout. I thought he was going to contest the shot. He was so mad.
Tad
He
was like,
was out there like, but as Curtis Jones was letting the ball go, Tad was 5 feet out on the court like this. Timeout.
Yeah, it was a great home game, a lot of excitement there, but all of, as you mentioned, just when you're giving up that many opportunities against a team that is really well balanced. I mean, they were the number 3 team in the country. They had them for a moment there, but just definitely fumbled the bag by turning the ball over that many times and culmination of missed shots and missed opportunities. And then we traveled down to Tempe, where after a game like that, it's like, okay, Colorado can definitely compete with Arizona State. They do have quite a talented roster, but there was a little bit of an edge. BJ Freeman, I guess by that time in the game, BJ Freeman fouled out. He got a flagrant 2, and he was
Yeah.
their leading scorer in the game. But at that time, there was already too much separation, and this was Trevor Baskin's game. Meanwhile, no other buffs were able to breach double digits, while Trevor Baskin had 23 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 steals. Really a productive game for him, but Andre Yakmovsky had 9 points. But even then, it's like you need to put some more points on the board. This was one of their poorest, maybe offensive performances of the season,
Yeah,
at least
definitely.
against a team that isn't really too hard to contest against. They only made 3 3-pointers. I think that was certainly a big um, pivotal element in this game. Well, especially without Julian Hammond, he went 0 of 7, 0 of 3 from 3. It's like when you're missing your leading scorer, there's definitely going to be some disparateness on the offensive side. 34.8 from the field, made 23 shots from 66 attempts. Just right out of the gates, Colorado kind of just wasn't, they weren't ready to play this game. ASU was able to outscore them 40-27 in the first half. And with that much separation, there just wasn't much for Colorado to do, especially with the terrible night they were having on the offensive side of the ball. There just wasn't enough to chip away at ASU while they were shooting 52% and made 13 3-pointers. So they were able to get up a variety of shots and get 4 Sun Devils in double digits in this game. Yeah, your takeaways from this matchup wasn't what I anticipated coming off a pretty, a pretty solid performance against the number 3 team. They lost by 20 points, 81-61 in Tempe.
Yeah, this was a letdown spot. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. They kind of folded up like a cheap tent in the first half of this thing. It was
I
kind of,
like that.
it was kind it was kind of disappointing. It's an old basketball cliche where like don't let missing shots bleed into the rest of your game, and that
hmm
is what happened to them in this game. I mean, you mentioned
hmm
the shooting numbers, less than 35%, 3 for 24 from 3. That happens, especially with a team like CU that doesn't have a surplus of scoring talent, right? Like these nights are going to happen, especially on the road. They're going to have games where they shoot the ball poorly. They just are. They might not have any more games where Julian Hammond scores no points, but they will have games where they don't shoot the ball well. And in this, when that happens, you have to just dig in and make it ugly and make it like you just got to make it a 65-61 game. That's just, you got to defend, you got to rebound, you got to make it physical. And they just didn't do that in the first half. You could feel the morale of the team just kind of like, bleh,
Yeah.
as they were
Yeah.
just missing shot after shot. And then within, I don't know, at not very long, sometime in the first half, it was a 20-point game. And it was like, well, that, now you're in a hole that you do need to start making shots to get out of, and you're in a game where you're not making any shots. And sometimes it's as simple as that. It's easy to see why they would have a letdown. You have the missed opportunity at home to get a huge win. Then you have to go on the road against a team that you probably think you can beat. Whereas Iowa State, you have to get up for that game. You have to
hmm
be up for 40 minutes for that game. And against then you go play an ASU team that isn't quite as talented. They're not as heralded as one of the top teams in this conference. But against any team on the road in this conference, if you don't show up to play, you're going to get run out of the gym in 10 minutes. And that's exactly what happened.
Definitely. Different story at UCF. They went to their gym, were able to put up a battle, but it just wasn't their cleanest. Another not kind of sloppy performance. But Julian Hammond shut up again after scoring 0 points against ASU. He said, "I'm not going to do that again," and led the team with 26 points. But this was a game where, I mean, just looking at the box, it's like UCF was shooting 39.3% from the field. I guess they made 10 threes, but Colorado's offense made a dramatic shift from ASU to this game, shooting 52.2%. And they made 7 threes. I mean, fine shooting night. You were able to catch catch this game. What was kind of the deal breaker at the end that made Colorado come up short in this one?
Yeah, just the sloppiness. I did think that the energy, the effort was there. That was back in this game. I thought they played pretty well for most of the first half. I thought defensively they played pretty well. But the turnovers were just, I mean, I mentioned earlier that the turnovers were going to get uglier. This was the game that I was referring to. 22 turnovers for CU
Oof.
road against UCF. In the second half, CU, they shot well. They made 4 out of 7 threes. They made 14 of 26 from the field. They had 14 made field goals and 14 turnovers in the second half, the same amount, which just isn't going to cut it on the road against a team who is, I mean, these are two evenly matched teams, right? Like that, this was a back and forth game. It was a close game. There was a stretch in this game that I went through and I wrote down possession by possession. So with 15 minutes to go, 15-19, Andre Yakmovsky made a 3-pointer to give Colorado a 9-point lead, 53-44. The ensuing list of possessions in a row, these were Colorado's next possessions after that basket. Turnover, turnover. Bangatak made a 3. Turnover, 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 turnover. Elijah Malone had a layup blocked. He made a layup on the next possession, and then they had a turnover and another turnover.
Damn.
And at that point, the game was tied with just under 9 minutes, I think. That was like a 6-minute stretch where they had all of those turnovers, and it was like, oh my.
Ooh.
I mean,
Oh
there
my
was
gosh.
everything that you've ever seen. Throwing the ball out of bounds, getting the ball stolen, throwing the ball to the other team, illegal screens, travels. It was every single kind of turnover that you can design on a basketball court. Just the unforced turnovers that continue to be a problem for this team, that's going to continue to cost them games, and it cost them this game, and it cost them the Iowa State game. Bar none, like that was it. Julian Hammond played great offensively. Andre Yakmovsky played really well. But the turnovers were just way too much for them to overcome in this game. And then at the end of the game, they still had a chance. They were gifted chances to win the game, and they kept fouling in the last couple minutes. I think UCF's final like 4 points were free throws in the last minute, 5 points maybe. And then with a chance to win, down by 1, CU missed 2, not bunnies. They were not bunnies. They were contested shots. They were tough, but around the rim shots that are makeable. And then with 3 seconds left, they get a kind of bizarre 5-second call on UCF where the inbounder, I've never seen this before. The inbounder is holding the ball and the refs, 1, 2, 3. And with 4 seconds, the inbounder just like walks off of the baseline like he called timeout, but he never actually called the timeout. And the ref was like, all right, 5. I've never seen, it was like the guy, he just forgot to signal timeout. It was like he called it in his head.
Uh-huh.
I thought that was going to work. And then CU got one more chance to win, and Elijah Malone had a layup blocked on the inside. So they still had chances to get over the line. 3 shots around the rim in the last couple seconds. Tough shots, but if you have 3 chances to win the game late in the game and you also had 14 turnovers in the second half, that has to feel like a game that slipped through your fingers that CU really should have won.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, a 9-point lead. Yeah, that sequence that you just explained, that will do it. In games like that, I mean, especially in the Big 12, you have to be at the top of your game in every facet, and a lot of times these teams can come back and get you, but all of these self-inflicted errors are, at least looking at it now, could be potentially the demise of this team, and we just see it over and over and over. At least these past 3 games have been really, really high turnover games, and there has to be, some fixing there, some recipe in order to try to limit those, especially as they are headed into another ranked matchup against number 17 West Virginia play them on Sunday at West Virginia at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. So some certainly a lot of things to fix. These road trips can be long and arduous, and this one certainly has, as they fall to at least 0-2 on the road, 9-5 overall, 3-game losing streak, and hopefully they can figure out a way. Seems like they are able to, put their best ball on the floor when they're
Yeah.
playing ranked teams. So we'll see.
West Virginia's best player is out to Tucker DeVries. I don't think he's coming back. He was out. He's been out for a month now, and
Mhm.
there's been no real update. He was out indefinitely. There hasn't really been an update on DeVries, so we'll see if he's back on Sunday. I would assume no, if we haven't heard anything by now. But if not, good opportunity for CU to kind of get back on track there with a good performance.
Definitely. And then on the women's side, I can't remember if the last time we talked about West Virginia or not. I know it's been a while, but we can touch on it. I mean,
Yeah.
Colorado women are doing well. 11-4, 2-3 on the road this season. Great game, great win against number 14 West Virginia at home. Uh, Loss against number 11 TCU. They got Haley Van Lift 63-50 in Fort Worth, and then the Texas road trip continued. Another loss against number 24 Baylor 76-62. And then a win against UCF last night, 81-62, very dominant performance. You can start. I'm trying to remember if we recapped West Virginia.
We can touch on it. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
we can.
we might have been previewing that.
Um, I'm trying to live. There we go. Live podcasting. I'm pulling up the stat broadcast. I have 1,000 tabs open. It's December 21st. Okay, look into that, but it's been a while. Glad we're catching up. There's much to catch up on. Fred Foreman, 22 points. Jade Masagayo, 18, and then Noor Garzon. I feel like didn't we touch on this? It sounds like all very familiar to me. Overall, it was a fantastic win that Colorado opened up conference play with. They shot 54% from the field. 6 3-pointers, but they were able to get multiple players in double digits. And I know we've talked about prior. This is a team that we don't really know who specifically is going to step up, but I know they're going to put their best effort out on the floor and contribute in different ways. But getting 3 pretty solid double-digit performances from Garzon, Masagayo, and Foreman, that'll do it against a really talented West Virginia team. Of course, their defense was a pivotal asset in winning this game. West Virginia shooting 39.2% from the field, also made just 26.1% from three. It's 6 3-pointers out of 23 attempts. Not really hitting it from three. When you go into the CU Event Center, I feel like it's, they have the maybe home court advantage to some degree, but at the same time, I think J.R. Payne and her Buffs came to play, and J.R. Payne coached a really fantastic game in a game where West Virginia did have the upper hand coming in as a ranked team, but Colorado showed that they can get those ranked wins. I mean, it was a little bit harder on the road in these last couple of weeks, but it was a good way to start conference play and give them a little bit more confidence as they rolled into these Texas games.
Yeah, this team is a bunch of grinders, right? As we would expect from any J.R. Payne coach team. It sort of does resemble some of the JR teams from before the last couple of years, where they got sort of a talent influx and had that to kind of match the grittiness and the hard nosed kind of style of play. It does resemble some of those old teams. This team grinds. We saw it a little bit in the even in the loss to Louisville. They fight in the second half of these games where they're down. They outscored West Virginia 25-9 in the fourth quarter of this game to come back and win by 5. They were getting beat. This was a huge win against a ranked team for a CU team that is sort of tracking to be a bubble team. Hopefully if they can get a couple more of these wins, they can work their way into that tournament conversation. But these are the types of wins that in March you look back at and you say, if they do end up sneaking in, that's the type of comeback, that's the type of quarter that can get them into the NCAA tournament. So that was really impressive. Obviously, it's going to be tougher on the road. We talked about this with the men. It'll be the same with the women. It's just going to be difficult on the road in the Big 12. Um, TCU Baylor is a brutal trip, by the way. Two really,
Yeah.
really good basketball teams, two excellent basketball teams. So no shame in dropping both of those. But kind of segueing into those two, I guess,
Yeah.
the they need Frida. We've talked about how they kind of are up and down with like who's gonna be the person on any night that is going to score the points. I think that after watching the last four games, West Virginia, TCU, Baylor, and UCF last night, Frida has to be there. That is the baseline for them, I think. She had 22 points against West Virginia. She had 26, I want to say, last night, 22 last night as well
Mm.
on just 11 shots. So very efficient. But against TCU, I don't think she made a field goal. I think she might have
One
had
point.
1 point. Yeah. And then against Baylor, she was 5 for 16, 10 points, 0 for 7 from three. And in both of those games, the offense just sputtered and it really just kind of never got off the ground. And it feels like they need her scoring gravity, her
Yeah.
spacing. That is what opens it up for everyone else. And when she's going, then you can get these other contributions from some of the other players with the space that she creates and the attention that she draws. But when she doesn't have it going, like in the TCU and the Baylor games, everyone else becomes easier to guard, if that makes sense. And they
Hmm.
just don't have the creators um, like they have in the past to overcome that. And that's I think is my biggest takeaway, the biggest thing I've learned from watching them over the last four games.
Certainly. I mean, you can see how how much they miss Frida in those games, and how successful they are when she does have a 20-point performance, and they're going to need her to continue to be that leading scorer and person that they really rely on. But at least in these past two games when Frida falls, it's like the rest of the team kind of goes with her as well. At least in that TCU game, there just wasn't their cleanest performance. Jade Masagayo and Kenawetta both fouled out, and Masagayo led the team with 14 points. There just wasn't a lot of scoring there, and there's some of these offensive lulls while they're just the other team is going to continue to beat them. And it's TCU. It's you're going to run into those challenges as well. TCU currently leads the Big 12 16-1. Colorado sits 1, 2, 3, sorry, 4, 5, 6, 7, seventh in the conference at 11-4, and 2-2 in conference play. So,
I will
um,
say one
yeah,
thing I did want to add that I was the other thing that I kind of my kind of big picture takeaway, the one that they need Frida too. I was impressed with them inside
yeah,
these games. Baylor, even in the losses to Baylor and TCU, I know we talked a lot before the season about how would they handle big teams. They're kind of a smaller, more athletic team in the front court. I believe they out rebounded both teams. They were +1 against TCU on the boards, and they were +1 against Baylor. Against Baylor's obviously got Aaronette Vonleh, so that was a nice reunion. She'll be back at the event center later this year as well. And TCU's got Sedona Prince inside. Really teams with a big size advantage, and I thought CU held up really well. They never felt physically outmatched. There's a talent gap between them and the top teams in the conference, but I don't think that they were physically overmatched or they were overwhelmed by the size, which I think is a great, great sign moving forward.
definitely. That's, yeah, as you mentioned, it's something that we talked about, and it's positive to see that they can handle some of the size moving forward. They're playing Kansas next. Also, doubleheader on Saturday with the men's, also at 1 p.m. Mountain Time at the CU Event Center. So, women are home and are away, and yeah, the basketball season continues. A lot more basketball to play. Colorado men's really need to figure out how to turn the ball over less, and the women doing fine overall. Free Foreman is going to be the heavy offensive reliance as we go through here, but Jarrah Payne always finds certainly a way, and as you mentioned, they they are kind of riding the bubble a bit, and let's see if they can secure some more ranked wins because a lot of good ranked teams in the Big 12. Same on the men's side. Difficult conference, as we know. Just kind of beating a dead horse there as well. But
Very much.
um, yeah, that is talked. We recapped a lot since the last time we've spoken, and yeah, Junior Day is coming up in the next few weeks. They usually hold at the end of January. I'll definitely keep you in the loop on what recruits are potentially going to make a visit to Boulder, peruse, and yeah, Colorado definitely has a knack of bringing good talent. Quentin Gibson, Max Preps player, actually no, Julian Lewis, Max Preps player of the year, as well as Quentin Gibson at their positions. So Quentin Gibson, don't sleep on him. He's been doing very, very well in his time in Texas. Yeah, that is all from us.
He is
Yeah,
the most and I mean this in a good way. He is the most hyped 3-star recruit that I can remember. He has earned all of it. He's a very good player. He should be higher than a 3-star from what I've seen.
yeah.
But it feels like that everybody is taking notice of how good he is, but also not giving him
Him the credit.
star, which is it's funny to me. It's weird.
No, that's something that I've thought. I'm like, should be a 4-star. We'll reach
Yeah,
out to our
agreed.
bosses and see what the vibes are there. But anyways, that's all from us. We'll see you guys next time, and thank you for watching. Peace.